All right, look at that beat. Well, it's the end of October and we're still growing and harvesting in the dome. It's definitely a thrill for us to have the garden continue to produce in late October. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't expect to grow right now that are still growing really well, including basil and tomatoes and squash, summer squash, which is winding up, but it's just amazing that we still have a little bit of harvest from what we planted back in July. The dome is low maintenance and high maintenance at the same time, if that makes any sense. It does require daily attention in the form of watering. On the cooler days, you still need to water about once a day instead of twice a day. And if it's an overcast, cool day, you could probably even skip a day. But you can't skip multiple days, especially with leafy greens and the arugula that I just planted. So in this video, I want to show you how we're automating the dome to water itself while we go away on vacation. We got a couple of vacations coming up, so we want to be able to feel secure and confident that we can have our plants be watered automatically. Let me show you the products that we're going to try out. Coming over to the water spigot, these are the products I'm going to install so that we can have automated irrigation in the dome. And these products are sponsored by Rainpoint. They are the makers of this 3-zone digital water timer that's going to be critical to manage the water flow, some leader hose, and also some flat soaker hose. So the soaker hose is going to be what irrigates, but we can't have it irrigating the floor, so I've got some leader hose that's going to attach to the timer and then make it over to the raised beds over here and here, and then that way we can have the soaker hose do the job that it needs to do. One caution is that since these ends are made with plastic, definitely want to have the Teflon tape so that you can have a really good seal and a connection, and don't force it when you're attaching the other hoses because it's not made out of metal. So make sure threading it properly and not forcing it. All right, with the leader hose connected, now we can see how it can reach all the way to the garden bed. This one. So as you can see here, we have 3 separate raised beds, which is tricky to manage watering them all with one spigot. But this project's being made possible with a 3-zone timer and with the hose extensions that allow the soaker hose to reach the beds that are furthest from the spigot. So it's a little bit of hose to watch out for, but this is sort of vacation mode. And so, I'm not really having to worry about stepping over the hose all the time. So looking close up, it's a nice nylon material, which is permeable, that's what allows the water to leak out of it. So I'm going to attach this end to the end of the leader hose. Connecting end, and this is the butt end. So unless you're connecting it to another length of hose, you leave that on so the water won't flow out. It'll build up pressure, so it'll leak out the hose. So now that it's attached, I have to figure out which way I want it to lay in the beds. So now I just kind of snake it around my plants here. Okay, so now everything is hooked up. The water is on, the pump is open, but digital timer is off. So now it's time to get familiar with how the digital timer works. The user interface is very intuitive and user-friendly. And full disclosure, I don't normally read user manuals until I really have to, and in this case, I didn't need it at all to get it to work. So for programming the digital timer, you want it in the on position, and then you want to select your zone. So I'm going to be working with zone 1. And then you turn the dial to start time. So this is what time of the day you want your water to kick on. And I've already had the clock set up, so you can set AM or PM, like a 12-hour clock or a 24-hour clock. But you're just using the plus or the minus to adjust the start time. And you can have it on the hour or on the half hour or even to the minute. And then you would hit OK and then switch to how long on the dial. Do you want it to run for 30 minutes or less time? I'm just using a demonstration here for the video, so I'm just going to set a short time, but I might adjust that later if I decide 10 minutes is not long enough. So today I'm just doing an initial assessment in running the system just to see what I might need to adjust before we go on vacation. Like, does the timer need to run longer? Is the hose able to reach all areas adequately? How is the pressure? Do I need to check for kinks or lack of flow in any area? Can I improve the flow in some spots? These are the things I will monitor daily so I can make any final adjustments before we go. Definitely some areas where the water's coming out more easily than others. How about the kale? Good, the kale's getting some pretty good watering. Oh, I see a kink. As the hose pressurizes, I can see places where it's starting to drip out, which is exactly where I want it, on top of that squash. Going here, so definitely some areas getting more water than others, but I like how the vegetable patch is giving a lot. It's definitely pretty watery under here. I set it for 9 minutes, so that should be quite a lot of water. Pretty adequate to keep this bed nice and soaked. Flowers are definitely getting some moisture here. Coming into the hotter part of the bed. Let's see, I might do some rerouting here so I can kind of get this dirt wet. It's not about getting every single plant soaked, but just about getting the entire ground saturated enough where I can feel pretty confident that they'll be okay for a week. I guess we'll see if 9 minutes is enough time. I might go increase it to 20 or 15. Zone 1 is this hose right here. Let's go follow it. So I routed it and I see where it's inflating. So as it's fully inflated, I'll have to make some adjustments so that it doesn't move, right? So I want it to stay there but not fall down. So inflating, inflating, inflating. Saturating, you can see where it's dry still right here, getting wet there. I'm not quite worried about the succulent flower, so I sort of bypass that. It's okay if the ground gets a little bit wet. But I want to really water this grapevine, which don't want it to kink. Around the eggplant for sure. This is where I planted potatoes, so I want that to stay damp. This is another grapevine, but there's also a tomato plant right here, so keep that on the tomato plant. I want this on the pepper plant. Tomato between the basils. Another tomato plant right there. And basil plant. But really wanting the squash to get a good amount and this squash to get a good amount. So that looks really good to me. And then, of course, keeping this dirt nice and damp through the arugula into the beet. Pretty wet looking right there. Definitely excited between the 3-zone timer and the soaker hose. I think we're going to be able to get a handle on keeping this entire dome watered pretty well while we're gone. Now I do have somebody looking after the dome, but at least this is going to save her having to water every single thing every single day, and she can just kind of water the things that need it when she checks on the dome. So the soaker hose doesn't replace watering hanging baskets or the potted plants. For that, Rainpoint actually makes another product for house plants where you can stick a spike in the soil and that can sort of irrigate from another source. So definitely for our purposes, I think this is going to do a pretty good job keeping things going while we're gone for a solid week. Definitely excited to have this. Thanks, shout out to Rainpoint for providing these products so that we could test them out in our dome. But I definitely think it's a great solution if you don't have anybody to look after your plants and you have like a raised bed situation. This is what it's ideal for. So let's evaluate. The 9 minutes is almost up. Definitely things look pretty watered in these beds. I think I'm not going to really have to make much adjustment. Maybe the arugula could use a little bit more, but I'm thinking for once a day. I'll test this again tomorrow, doing a 15-minute interval in the morning time, and then we'll see how that goes. I definitely like how much water that squash is getting though. So overall, yeah, I'm happy that going on vacation does not mean that our vegetable and flower garden days are going to be over. They're not going to dry up in my absence. We've worked so hard to get where we are now with a garden that I'd hate to see the end of the vegetables just because we had to go away. And it still gets pretty hot in here on sunny days. It was 80 degrees yesterday, so we still need regular watering on days like that. I definitely want to make one more batch of pesto and tomato salad before we pull out the plants for winter.